Hi, everybody. It's another Conversations with, and today with me is Father Bob Grattarati. Father Bob is the longtime pastor at St. Joseph's Church in Charlton. But today what we're going to talk about is a very interesting program. I guess they call it a movement. And it's called Cursillo. And it's an outstanding program. And for those who, just give you a quick explanation, sort of like a little weekend retreat, if you understand what I'm saying. But I thought today, Father Bob, we could talk about where did it begin and where did it come from? And I know you've been involved in it for many years.
Thank you very much, Dick. It's good seeing you, and thank you for the invitation. Yeah, let's see if we can help anybody out.
Yeah.
It began in Spain in the late 1930s, early 1940s, and it began as a youth movement. And actually, it began really in response to some words of the Pope at that time, Pius XII, who was speaking at a Christmas gathering, his message to the world, because it was on the winds of World War II. Yeah. And he said, is there any love left in this world? Because it was really pretty bad. So this young man, 21, 22 years old, decided we got to do something about it. So he gathers his group. He was a youth leader, and he gathers his group, and he says, we got to pray. And they went to the shrine of St. James, the Camino Real, which is very, very famous. Yeah. And there they offered their lives to the Lord. And this was born around 1940, 1941, 1942, 43. And it was originally intended for young men, maybe from 20 to 30, 19 to 30. But then it evolved and it grew and it became very much involved in the entire world. Now, what had happened was a new bishop was assigned to the diocese. And this young man, Eduardo Bonin, who, by the way, is on a fast track to becoming a saint, he was called upon to pick up the bishop at the airport and bring him to the bishop's house. And as they're driving, young man, Eduardo says, Bishop, I've got this youth group going and I want to get it involved. And Bishop Juan Hervas was his name. He says, I want to help you with it. Tell me what you're doing. I want to help you with it. So the two of them devised the Cursillo movement, and they wrote an awful lot of literature with regard to the Cursillo movement. And so the theological underpinnings were by the bishop, and then the practical application of it was by Eduardo Bonin. It came to the United States in 1957, believe it or not, to Waco, Texas, because of some Spanish servicemen. And the first Cursillos began. And then it came to our diocese in the early 1960s.
Wow.
So it's quite an experience.
So then when did you get involved in it?
I got involved in it the second or third year after I was ordained. I was probably 27, 28 years old when I made my Cursillo 100 years ago. I'm just kidding, as a matter of fact. But it had a profound effect on my life. It had a very, very profound effect on my life. And actually, for the folks to understand is our experiences shape us. For example, the experience that Moses had at the burning bush shaped him. What do I see? Come no closer. He hears these words, this is holy ground, take off your shoes. That experience shaped him. The angel appears to Mary. Who is this? Be not afraid, Mary. Be not afraid, Mary. That experience shaped her. The founder of the movement, Eduardo, and his colleagues said, we must devise something that is going to provide an experience of God. And as you know, Dick, having made one, does it do that?
It does.
Absolutely.
I mean, from my perspective, I've been around a long time. I was baptized when I was 3 weeks old. I wasn't asked. I was taken to the church. Somebody dunked my head in water, and I'm now a Catholic.
Right.
And then I had no choice, but I went to the nuns when I was in the first grade. And so that's how we were brought up. And you go through this in life, and you participate. I've probably 7,000 or 8,000 first and second readings, 3,000, 4,000 homilies. So you go through it all, and you think you're pretty smart. And then I went to this event, this movement down in Putnam, and it was a great experience for me, because I remember saying to myself, gee, I went to bed one night, second or third night I was there, and I said, gee, right about the time you think you know everything, you learn a little bit new, and you learn some more things. And we had 3 or 4 different priests came and did presentations, and then we had other presentations done. But what I found most stimulating for me was we sat at a table with there was a couple of hosts, and then there was 5 of us who were participants. And we would hear a lecture or a conversation, and then we would discuss it. And it was amazing to me how we'd have 5 different interpretations of that discussion. And some of them were spirited. I mean, someone, well, wait a minute, how did you see that? You know, and so it really was and I don't want to get over dramatic, but a rebirth in a way of things you already knew, exactly, but had left go.
I always call it, it's kind of like the great defrost.
Right.
We believe these things, we've known them, we were baptized, I was baptized, I didn't choose my faith, as a matter of fact, you didn't choose yours.
Yeah.
Most people don't choose their
No,
faith, which is fine, but then to rediscover it in a very, very dramatic and experiential way is, wow, thank God this happened to me. I'm so grateful for what this happened. So that's how the founders discovered all of this. And as I say, in the beginning, it began for men, and young men and men, and so forth. There's a fascinating story told about a very, very prominent layman in Spain who was very famous, very friendly with the cardinal, I think in Madrid, or the cardinal in Barcelona, I forget exactly where. And they would have dinner together, and this wonderful man had made the Cursillo, and he and his wife were having dinner with the archbishop. And the archbishop, she told the archbishop, if you don't allow me to make the Cursillo, Archbishop, there's going to be a divorce. What do you mean? She says, he was a Catholic, but he was kind of like a very, very silent and a very sleeping Catholic. I had to do all the faith. And the children, says he comes back from the Cursillo and he outshines me. I want to know what went on. Right. So the cardinal talked to the leaders and said, you have to now admit women. And that's how they admitted women. However, in our country, we do men's Cursillos first and then women's Cursillos. Yeah. In certain countries, and maybe Spain, I'm not sure exactly, they do combined men-women Cursillos. But it's an experience. The word means a little course in what is fundamental about belonging to Christ. Yeah. Very, very important. And as it turns out, it's not only Catholics that have the Cursillo movement. The Anglican Church has adopted it. The Presbyterian Church has adopted it. The Mennonites have adopted it. Wow. The Methodists have adopted it in their own interpretation, in their own description of it.
But in my case, Jen, my wife, she went before I did. Yes. And so she came home. She said, you really got to go. I said, Jen, what are they going to teach me? I can go do that thing.
Dick, when you say that, that's exactly how I felt.
I could go do it.
When the layman, when I was 26, 27 years old, this young man, by the way, his name was Lou Costello. He was a layman in our church. He comes, Father, you got to make this course. I'm just ordained. I just finished my theology. What am I going to learn?
I'm in Rome. What am I
going to? And well, finally, it took me a year for them badgering me, and I could not believe what I learned. I was so humbled. Yeah. Oh my God. And I said, this guy must have really cared and loved for me so deeply to be so patient with me. Because again, it is rooted in holy, theological, charismatic, if you will, not exactly, but experience of the presence of God in our lives.
Right. I mean, it was funny because I said, oh, I could go teach that thing. And you know what I found out? Oh no, I couldn't.
It's more than educational and it's more than informational. It's really transformational. Yeah. And that's the genius of the movement. That's the genius of the movement.
The other thing was too is the interaction. Now I met people I probably never would have met in my life.
Exactly.
Number one, from now
everywhere.
I also met some people who knew me from my previous church over at St. Anne's and St. Patrick's, came running over, gave me a big hug, and it was great to see them. But it was just an exciting thing because I met some unique people, and they had their own perspective. But it was a great experience, and you come away from it, and you're a better person.
Oh, transformed, which is wonderful. And you only make one in a lifetime. Yeah. Because it's allegedly it's to last until you reach the gates of heaven. But I was really very, very much moved. And I must say, I made it as a young priest, and I'm grateful because it gave a whole new dimension to my priesthood. I said, if this can exist on the earth, it's got to be available to people. So everywhere I've gone, tried to kind of model my ministry on the dynamic of the Cursillo, and also try to get as many people to make it as possible. We have quite a number of people in St. Joe's and Charlton who have made it, but also throughout the diocese, maybe close to 4,000 to 5,000 over the years that have made it. And of course, the Cursillo has, it's now worldwide, actually, and I was blessed by the Lord God to meet the founder, Eduardo Bonin, at one of our international secretariat meetings in Detroit about 20 years ago. He had given his whole life to the Cursillo, and he died about 2 years ago. He's in his late 80s.
Yeah.
And now the church is in the process of proclaiming him a saint because he dedicated his entire life to bringing people closer to God. And that's the whole point of the Cursillo.
Yeah, and I think the thing that's exciting about it, and I know a lot of it is protected, you got to be real careful, but the number of people who support you. I mean, I received letters and notes from people who it was just, I mean, I had tears in my eyes.
Well,
I'm reading some of these notes from people, and I just said, wow.
It's interesting that you would say that, Dick, because we believe in the communion of saints. Well, those are nice words. I believe in it. I don't even know what it means. That's the communion of saints.
Right.
That dimension, when you could open this up, that's the communion of saints.
Right.
In the flesh.
That's right.
And that's why I thought, wow, this is amazing. It's like, some sort of a beautiful thought, communion of saints. I have no idea what it means. But when you experienced it, when you go to your room and when you get this package, wow, it's mind-blowing.
That's right.
It's mind-blowing.
And there was 2 or 3 of them in there from people who I know very well. And I would have said, if you asked me, that's the last person I'll ever hear from. And then I get this beautiful note from 2 or 3 different people who are pals of mine, but you could, and they were handwritten, and I just went, wow.
Yeah. I also want to talk about the Cursillo has a theme song, and you know what the theme song is, of course, and the watchwords are De Colores. De Colores means of the colors. And this is really a Spanish kind of a music song, and it's called All of the Colors. De colores, the fields love to dress in all during the springtime. The birds have their clothing that comes every season. The rainbow is vested across the blue sky. De colores, and so must all love be of every bright color to make my heart cry. Sings the rooster. The rooster was the clarion call to St. Peter that night. Hey, Peter, you better get back on track. That's the rooster.
Yeah.
Hey, folks, you better get back on track. Hey, folks, God is loving you.
Yeah.
Don't reject him.
Yeah.
Start living his life and start living his love.
Yeah.
So we use the Cursillo, the De Colores, and also all the colors. The gay community has also adopted that, but the Cursillo had it, if you will, way before that time.
Well, none of that, but of course I had them all in hysterics because I would sing, "Hey Dolores."
Hey Dolores. Hey Dolores. That's right.
And we had a great group of guitar players.
Guitarists, great.
And so we sang a lot, and that was the fun. It became fun after a while.
Yes.
I mean, it was not all tedious studying and listening, and because there was fun put into it, and we enjoyed it. I mean, we had to sing De Colores, or we couldn't get our supper.
That's right. Yes.
So we were willing to sing that.
But the food was good. The food was great.
It was excellent. We had breakfast in the morning. It was delightful. It was a fabulous weekend, but I think the beauty of it is you got a whole new perspective, and even as I said, you got different perspectives from different people, yes. and when you got, I would sit back and say, wow, this fellow said that. Gee, that's interesting. I never thought of that. Gee, maybe he's got a different angle than I had, and it was intellectually stimulating.
Wonderful.
And it was just a great program, and I can't. I've told since I got back. Everybody I bump into, have you gone to Cursillo? You got to do that.
Right.
You got to
well,
go.
It's interesting because some people, that haven't made it say, there's a lot of secrets and blah, blah, blah. Well, I don't know if they're secrets, but there certainly are surprises, because another name for God
they're not
is
secrets.
surprise.
Yes,
there were surprises.
The surprise is not secrets.
Right. You know, like, for example, Moses was quite surprised when he walked and he saw this thing and he heard a voice. Boy, was he surprised.
Yeah.
Mary is in prayer, as we might just think about, perceive, and boy, was she surprised when she saw an angel.
Well,
so
just think
we are surprised to receive the message of the Lord, too.
Just think of Jesus walking down the street, and there's a poor leper, and he cures him. You want to talk about surprises?
Exactly.
Imagine all those people standing there looking, watch this guy walk up and give him a blessing, and the guy clears up his leprosy.
Those are the surprises of
And he goes
God.
up on a mountain, he's got 5,000 Jews up there, and he's got a fish and a bagel, and he feeds
Everybody,
them.
but I don't know if they had cream cheese, but at least they had the bagel.
Well, it's going to be a bagel. But anyway,
but
but the point is, you talk about surprise. Imagine the looks on their faces when he did these little parting the sea. I mean, think about it. And so it gives you a whole different perspective, and it comes down to one word: faith.
Faith.
You got to believe. You know, you got to believe. And I remember my old grandpa used to tell me, because he was from Ireland, and he tells me the story. I was listening to the Red Sox. This is way back. And they were playing the Yankees, and all they had to do was win 1 out of 3 games, and they'd win the pennant. Well, they go down to New York, and they lose the 3 games. And I'm in tears, 11 years old. And my grandpa puts his arms around me, and he said, "Now, Dickie, listen to your grandpa." He says, "Remember this, there's 3 leagues. There's the American League, there's the National League, and then there's the Yankees." Funny part is, he's right.
He's right.
And for years and years, we were believers. We believed in the Red Sox. Well, if we can do that, we certainly can believe in Jesus.
Jesus and the Lord, yes,
Yeah.
exactly right.
And the things that he did, and he shows us the way.
And he is the way. Of course, he is the way, and he shows us the way. But this was a great experience. And of course, my involvement, I don't even remember how many years I have been involved in it. I was involved in it from the very, very beginning. Wonderful. Our first diocesan priest director was Father Leo Barry, who died several years ago. And then I received a phone call from then Bishop Harrington, and the Cursillo had kind of gone fallow for a while. You know, sometimes our faith lives are like the tides. There's high tide, and then there's low tide, and then there were storms, and then there were beautiful calm seas. But life is like that, and so sometimes faith is like that. Well, there was a kind of a low period in the Cursillo, and I got a call from Bishop Harrington at the time asking me if I would take on the responsibility of being the spiritual director. I said, well, yes, what does it involve, and so forth. Well, that was 3 bishops ago, so here I am by God's grace. And Father Nick now is helping us out, Father Nick de Simone. We have a lot of other priests that are helping us out also. So it's a kind of like, it's a movement, and since that movement, others have kind of sprung from it, like Christ Renews His Parish, like Christ the Light of the World, like the Catholic Charismatic Renewal, like the Tres Dias, like the Residents Encounter Christ for those who are in institutions of incarceration, so that this may be available to as many people as possible.
Right. When you mentioned Father Nick, I was with him last night. He did the novena over at St. Anne's and St. Patrick's in Sturbridge, and it was youth night.
Oh, absolutely.
And he started his homily. He opens the book to Timothy. And Timothy has a whole section about the youth.
Yes.
You know, protect the youth, take care of the youth.
Exactly.
And he built his whole homily around young people and how important they are, and how we have to work with them and help them and guide them. And it was a great story. I saw Father Jonathan, who was here in Charlton, also in Southbridge a couple of years before, and he brought a young fellow with him. And this it's a funny story, but it's a dynamic story. And he told the story in his homily, and this young fellow read the first reading, and he was sitting in front, and he was probably 16 or 17 years old. And Jonathan said, 1.5 years or 2 years ago, there's a knock on the door, and I open the door, and he comes into the rectory, and he says, "Hi, Father, I want to go to confession." And Jonathan says, "Well, all right, is there a problem?" And he says, well, no. He says, "I just don't know how to do it." He says, "Well, what do you mean you don't know how to do it?" He said, "Well, I'm not a Catholic." And Father Jonathan says, "Well, if you're not a Catholic, you don't have to go to confession."
Exactly.
And he says, "Well, how do I become one?" He says, "Well, you got to be baptized." He said, there's the best news of all. I can baptize you, and it wipes away all your sins.
That's exactly. You don't even have to go to
You
confession.
don't have to go to confession.
Exactly
So
right.
that was this, and this young man is now goes to St. Peter Marian in Worcester, and I even to myself, I said, boy, there's a candidate for the priesthood.
Isn't that wonderful?
What a young guy. And I went up to him after the Mass, and I put my arm around him and shook his hand, and I said, wow. He's also now got his siblings are all converted.
Wow.
His mother is, and now they're working on his dad.
Isn't that great?
You know,
God bless Father Jonathan, God bless Father Nick.
Yeah.
In our role, as ministers, God bless all those who preach the gospel, is to preach the gospel and bring people closer to God.
Yeah.
And bring them to the Lord because He created us. And,
Yeah, and those,
He loves us.
I just sat there, and I said, wow.
That's
and they're
wonderful.
just great stories, and this goes back to like the Casillo thing. You go to there, and you come out, and it's a great story.
Well, it's incredible. It's absolutely incredible. Well, let me just tell you a couple of interesting fallouts from the Cursillo. There was a guy who had made the Cursillo and went home Sunday afternoon, and on Monday goes to work. And while he's at work, he sees his boss. He says to his boss, could I see you today? And the boss says, sure, come into the office after work. So this guy, let's call him Joe, goes into the office, and he says to his boss, he says, I got to ask your forgiveness. And Joe said, well, what's wrong? He says, I've been holding a grudge against you for the last 8 years. You're what? You have? He says, yeah, I didn't know that. He says, yeah, I've been very, very upset with you. He says, well, I didn't know that. He says, well, I didn't want you to know because I don't want to lose my job. He says, but I can't do that anymore. I got to ask your forgiveness. Will you forgive me for holding this grudge against you? I don't feel that way towards you anymore. And the boss says to him, wow, what happened to you? And he told him, he says, I just saw things in a different light after this weekend. And the boss says to Joe, Joe, you have my forgiveness, but I got to ask you a question. How do I get what you got? How do I get the ability to do what you just did?
Right.
And Joe says, make a Cursillo. And would you believe the boss made a Cursillo when Joe was on the team?
Wow.
Isn't that a great sense of humor?
Well, the thing is,
Isn't that great?
That it's a great thing. But Father, the thing that's amazing is the toughest thing in the world for us to do is A, change, and B, forgive people.
Whoa.
Somebody crosses your path, I'll get them. I'll come, boy, one of these days, and how great when you think about it, and a thing that really, you look around the world today with the violence that's going on and the hatred out there, and yet it's much easier to love than it is to hate.
Well,
even getting forgiveness, how hard is it, and yet it's real simple.
It's interesting you would say that. Jesus tells us, you have heard it said, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. You hurt me, I hurt you back, we're even. But I say to you, offer no resistance to evil. So the message of Jesus is to return love for hatred. Oh Lord, make me an instrument of your peace. Where there is hatred, let me bring love. This is what St. Francis tried to do. And so that, if we can learn that, our world changes, and as our world changes, everything that influences our world changes. But let me share another thought. About 7 or 8 months ago, right before Thanksgiving, almost a year ago now, I got a call from a woman, she was a widow, with a son who had a little bit of a handicap. And she said, my roof is leaking. I've gone to the bank, I can't get the loan, and blah, 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 blah. So I called one of our people who is in one of these Cursillo prayer groups. And I says, can you help out? He says, I'll go and see what we can do. Well, the long and the short of it is, he got together his prayer group, and they got together all of the funding and so forth, and they put a new roof on this woman's house. She had no church. She had not very much faith. She now is an active member of our church because of what had happened. And this happened all because of folks that are praying after they make their Cursillo.
That's right.
So this is living faith. This is faith in action. And it's always very, very inspiring to me. Very inspiring.
Well, in your ministry, and you can look back from Fitchburg, to here in Charlton, the stories that you've told, even during a homily. And we know a person who was at my table, and he was telling me the story about his wife happens not to be a Catholic. And he's a wonderful Catholic, and she used to go to Mass with him. And one day a priest said something about the Protestants, and she won't go to church with him anymore. And she said, I'm not going ever that. I won't go in that place ever again. And we were chatting at the table. I said, she got a birthday coming up? He said, what do you mean? You got an anniversary of her birthday? He said, why? I says, why don't you give her a Curcio? He says, what? Do you think? I said, of course. I said, and if you have any trouble getting her in, I know the person, and so do you, that can get her in.
Oh, yeah.
But he said, I never thought of that. What a great idea.
Yeah.
I said, and I said, because unfortunately, things have happened over the years.
Yeah.
There are people who will say things and in a general way, and it affects people.
Exactly. You know, I know that situation, Dick. It's so sad that she went to church and so some priest who was rather ill-informed or saying something negative. That usually doesn't happen. We're all children of God.
That's right.
We were all created by one. There's only one Lord, one faith, one baptism.
Right.
When you come down to it. And if we're going to be Curciistas, our approach to life, the way we walk through life is through mercy, forgiveness, and acceptance. And so that was unfortunate, that poor priest. I don't know who it was, but it's sad that happened.
It doesn't
That's
matter. But the point I'm making is, he lit up like a light bulb. He says, what a great idea. He says, I said, just give it to her for a present.
Yeah.
And tell her she's going.
She's going.
Period. And he laughed and laughed. But those are the things that were interesting, is to hear different stories from people.
Yes.
And now let's talk about how often they are, when they are, and there's women's and there's men's.
That's right. And the next women's is in October, I think the last week of October, 24th, I think, to the 28th. And they're held at the Immaculate Conception Retreat House just over the line in Putnam, Connecticut.
Which is a great place.
Which is a wonderful place, wonderful place. And then there are four. There's four a year, 2 men's and 2 women's. And I don't have the exact dates for 2019, but the next one is a women's Curcio, and that will take place, as I say, October 24th. If anyone interested, let us know.
Yeah.
Let us know. We'd be happy.
And they're fantastic, and they're just a great. And I know Jen came home, and she had a whole different outlook on things. She said, wow. And she experienced a lot of the things I did. She had a lot of enjoyment meeting different people.
Absolutely.
And even getting their position on a lecture or a program that was put on, how each person had a different angle on it.
Yes,
and she said she met some great people, and she's in a group.
Prayer group.
Yeah,
right.
they go. I think they meet every Friday.
Wonderful.
And she really enjoyed. She said they're great people. We have fun. It's an hour and a half, and she said they do it on a Friday, and she said it's great.
There are various things. One of the foundations are, what I say, your holiness, your formation in Christ, and your evangelizing. Your holiness, your closeness to the Lord, your formation, how much have you learned of God's mercy, God's love, God's preaching, and how do you share His good news so that other people might be holy, so that other people might get close to God. And that's usually the foundation for those various programs. Plus, they share their own personal lives, because holiness comes through the circumstances of our lives with the awareness of God within us.
The thing that I always think about, and as you go through, in your words, we're open every weekend, but I'm always thoughtful of Easter and Christmas when you can't get a seat. The place is packed, and they'll come out. Some that may be the only 2 times a year they go, but they go, and so deep in their heart, they're there, and the thing is that it's always interesting to me.
Well, sometimes it's still in somebody's freezer. It just needs to be defrosted a little bit.
That's right.
But we were talking earlier before we went on the air, and then we were talking about the numbers of folks coming to our liturgies and coming to our worship, and that mostly we don't see very young people coming, and we really have to do something about that. Young people, it seems to me, unless I'm mistaken, are influenced by the experiences that they have, especially by the experience of acceptance, by the experience of feeling that they belong and that they're valued and that they're loved and lovable.
That's right.
And I think that church, faith, religion has to perhaps have that, that maybe fortify that dimension of its life. In the past, this is what we always did. We always went to church. This was what we did. This was our pattern, and we did it.
You did it.
I don't know if that works anymore, Dick.
No.
Now, does that work anymore?
It doesn't work. You can't tell them.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Where my Nana was waiting for me every Sunday at 1 o'clock, and she'd say in her Irish brogue, Dickie, tell Nana what color the priest was wearing, and you better
Exactly.
know the answer. But there was one more if you got that right. Tell Nana just a little bit about the gospel. So she wanted to make sure you went, and she wanted to make sure you paid attention.
Exactly.
And that's how it was. Well, now, and back then it was fear. Now it's come on in.
Come on in. Come on in.
You know,
Yeah, we have something to offer. We
That's
have
right.
something to offer.
Well, we're very fortunate at St. Joseph because we do have a lot of
Well,
young
praise
people.
God. Yeah, we
You know,
just do.
and we have some great programs. That 5 o'clock mass is fabulous.
Praise God.
If the kids want to go to that, go.
Yeah.
It's a great mass.
Remember, I said at the beginning that the Cursillo had really, really influenced my whole ministry. And if there's anything of what's going on that seems to be, positive and helpful, that's great. It has a lot to do with what I learned as a 27, 28-year-old
Yeah,
young man,
that's right.
just ordained.
That's great. Well, Father Bob, we've come to the end of the show, but I want to thank you very much. It was a great discussion, and we'll have you back again.
Thank you very much, Dick. God bless you, and God bless everyone.